All right, we are live. Yeah. So once again, welcome everyone. My name is Dipo Ige. I am a lawyer specialized in data protection, cybersecurity, and national intelligence governance. Personally, I look at the laws, I analyze the regulations, I look at what should work and what it should look like, what it should be. For artificial intelligence, while we are trying to look at these laws, it keeps eluding us. As we are looking at a particular section on how to govern AI, and that thing comes out, and then we are thinking again, where do we start from? A few days ago, we were discussing Anthropic and what it can do, and now they're talking about a new model that can do a lot of things that we can't even fathom over here in Africa. So for us, discussing like this, having such discussions, especially with experts on the call, is very, very important. So we can know what to do, we can know how to do these things, and how to responsibly do these things. So welcome again. Today we're going to be having a keynote presentation as our first session. We're going to have a panel session where panelists are going to be discussing certain topics. Then we're going to have a question and answer session where we're going to be asking questions from the panelists. And also, I can also chip in some answers if I feel the need to. One thing I have to say is to give a background to the webinar. Why do we need this? Why is this discussion necessary? To make it a bit interesting for you, I have to take it back to the fact that the world has evolved again. It's just like when we discovered ships. Now we can navigate the oceans and then go to different areas of the world. We can see each other, we can trade. Eventually we got to invent airplanes, and we could move to the skies, which was, a wonderful achievement for human beings. And then we got the internet, which connected all of us virtually. I'm talking to Antonia, I'm talking to Paul from here, I'm talking to Sharon all the way from West Africa. So internet brought a lot of innovation, and now we are in a new area with AI. While we are trying to catch up with internet, we now have AI. So it's very important for us as Africans to follow through, to understand this technology, to know what it can do, to know the limitations, to know how to deploy it responsibly. We do not want AI to become a problem for the people. I watched an interview 2 days ago on Al Jazeera, and then the panelist said that AI can be likened to the nuclear technology. And just like the nuclear technology relies heavily on natural resources of uranium, AI relies on data as its own natural resources. So without data, AI can't function. There can't even be artificial intelligence. That is the truth. So that creates a situation whereby data is very important. And for Nigeria, we had our own data protection law passed in 2023, so we're still relatively new, and we are still coming into the enforcement gradually, as we can see in our own ecosystem. So while we are trying our best to catch up, AI has come, and AI needs that data that we're currently trying to regulate. So in that instance, we want to use artificial intelligence, we want to innovate, we want to participate in the technology, but we don't want it to be at the expense of our data, at the expense of our privacy, at the expense of our security. So the conversation today is basically centered around how we can responsibly deploy this AI without impacting our data. So thank you very, very much for joining once again. I hope it's going to be a very crucial discussion today. Discussing with us today are going to be the speakers. Let me introduce them one by one. Our first speaker is Mr. Paul Crawford. Mr. Paul is the Vice President of EMEA Access Intelligence. He brings extensive expertise to his role as the Vice President, with over a decade of operational leadership at Apple and more than 20 years driving business development for global technology and business services companies. His career pivot towards AI governance and risk management in 2023 underscores a commitment to making a meaningful impact at the intersection of technology and social sciences. Over the last few years, Paul has been studying AI governance and policy at European universities and earned industry-leading certifications in risk management frameworks and EU AI Act and GDPR assurance. As a For Humanity Fellow, he contributes significantly to the development of independent audit frameworks aligned with global regulations and standards, such as the EU AI Act, the GDPR, the NIST, and the ISO. Paul is passionate about exploring and addressing the geopolitical and societal impacts of emerging technologies, dedicated to minimizing risk and maximizing their benefits for society. Thank you very much, Mr. Paul, for coming. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Our second speaker is Mrs. Sharon Sherop. Ms. Sharon is a data scientist and an AI instructor with ACE Africa. Sharon Sherop is a data scientist and project manager based in Nairobi, Kenya, with expertise in machine learning, data systems, and AI capacity building. She teaches Python and AI applications at ACE Africa and leads cross-functional tech teams at Adanian Labs. She holds a BSc in mathematics from University of Nairobi and advanced certifications in data science and AI from ALX Africa and ACE Africa. As project lead for Safe AI, Secure, Accountable, Federated, and Ethical AI, Sharon is a part of a team pioneering Africa's first community co-created federated AI system to tackle misinformation, deepfakes, gender-based violence, and cybercrime. Our work emphasizes federated learning and data sovereignty, ensuring AI solutions are locally governed, culturally aligned, and designed to protect vulnerable communities across the continent. It is so nice to have you in this webinar, Ms. Sharon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure is all mine.
Other speaker, Dr. Blessing Gwembe, is an AI machine learning engineer with Access Intelligence. Dr. Gwembe is an AI/machine learning engineer with over 8 years of experience developing intelligence solutions in privacy-sensitive domains, such as healthcare and finance. His work focuses on applying artificial intelligence to address real-world problems while ensuring the responsible and ethical use of AI. He holds a PhD in computer science from Covenant University with a focus on privacy-preserving technologies, trustworthy AI, and security in the context of AI-driven attacks. His research area centers on mitigating privacy risk in federated learning and enhancing trust, transparency, and data protection in modern AI systems and online environments. Dr. Gwembe recently worked on a project of national interest, funded project at the University of Milan, where he employed privacy utility trade-offs in generative AI query protection and investigated privacy risk and misinformation in social media environments. He has also collaborated with the Institute of Energy in Norway on federated Bayesian optimization approaches for cyber attack detection and privacy risk quantification in Internet of Medical Things infrastructures, working closely with government stakeholders, healthcare providers, regulatory bodies, and international academic partners. Thank you very much for coming, Dr. Gwembe. I must say that is quite a technical introduction. You know, for me as a lawyer, right? Seeing all those things, I'm thinking, that is a lot of qualifications. You know, that is a lot of achievements. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Like I will say, the idea of the discussion, right, is not to know everything at once, but to take a step, right, in the right direction of even knowing things. You know, so today we are going to listen, we're going to understand, we're going to gain more things when it comes to how the world really works. So thank you. And I would really like to say, have a wonderful session in total. To hand over now, I think we have good messages from Mr. Paul Crawford, Access Intelligence, as well as ACE Africa. So Mr. Paul Crawford, over to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deepo. Thank you for that introduction. Always a pleasure to be doing anything with you, sir. Hi, Sharon, and hi, Dr. Gwembe. Pleasure to be working with you on this as well. So what are we doing here? I'm going to start perhaps by disagreeing with my friend Deepo on at least one topic. One of those topics being that Africa doesn't have novel ideas. Africa has lots of novel ideas. I get where he's coming from, right? Because there's this underlying narrative that people always have to look west or north in order to get the most, the most novel kind of technology, or what's being the trends, what's being made, what's happening. But if you look at something like Momo, mobile money, you'll know that Africa was definitely first with that invention, and then it spread to other parts of the world. In fact, up in Sweden, it is so popular, and I don't reckon it probably would have landed as quickly as it did without the development of that within Africa, and that was because there was a need for it. Deepo also mentioned that, we've passed through that period where we went from ships to the sky, and I was thinking, okay, so where's that analogy in my head? As technology evolves, when we look west or north, to companies like Anthropic and OpenAI? Do we see them as, you know, the kind of the big ships that we want to emulate? We want to build and develop businesses as developers, as builders, as entrepreneurs, to emulate those big ships. And I'm thinking, do we though? Doesn't that just kind of bring lots and lots of problems? Aren't we watching Elon Musk and what's his name? I forget his name, from OpenAI, standing in court berating each other at the moment? Don't they have Anthropic's Claude code being, you know, taken apart by cyber attackers? Is that really where we want to go? Just because they've got the infrastructure, is that really the ships we want to build? When we talk about federated learning, when we talk about it with regulators, we talk about it as a layer, but you can think of it as a tide. It's a tide that lifts all the ships. So it lifts all the builders, all the organizations, all the institutions, all the researchers in one go, so that there is that intelligence layer. The data can be used no matter where it's standing, no matter where it's siloed. And I think that's really important to think about, because that's what we're going to be talking about a lot, is how can we use the data, the fragmented, siloed data that does exist in Africa, but how can we use it effectively? And as the methods to collect, curate, manage, work with data improves across the continent, you know, as low discoverability turns into medium discoverability, as fragmented data sources turns into more kind of harmonized data sources, how can we use that intelligence to the best of our ability? And that's really where federated learning comes in. I'm really excited about federated learning, and Assessed Intelligence is really excited about, you know, the potential for the use cases. If you look across healthcare, critical infrastructure, cyber resilience, edge devices like watches, cars, motorized equipment, sensors, you get a sense that there's so much that can be done with federated learning, and it again provides that platform for builders to go out and achieve what they want to do with their AI solutions without running afoul of, you know, some of the data laws across the continent and across Europe. Again, we'll be coming back to those data laws a little bit further in the message. So from an assessed intelligence point of view, what we want to do is we want to facilitate. And our key projects that we're doing are kind of a pilot, a major impact project that we're working with regulators in Nigeria is our Know Your Community Intelligent Financial Inclusion project. And that's something we're going to be highlighting again in this message. So I think maybe just one last thought. I tend to go to different sources sometimes to kind of get a feel for how different regions of the world are thinking about themselves. I don't tend to do that for the US because I don't really care. Sorry, US, that's the truth. I tend to spend a lot more time worrying about Europe and Asia and Africa. And when I read things from the African Development Bank or from the African Union or from Smart Africa, I try and pick up on things that they're highlighting, and how can we then support those organizations to realize some of the goals that they're you know, kind of painting. And the AI productivity gain report from 2025 from the African Development Bank, they pointed towards a 1 trillion boost in the economy if we can really harness AI. And some of the things that they pointed out as being the challenges to that are things like data and trust in AI through weak regulations. And I think that's something you're going to hear us talk about a fair amount, is how can we have an incredible governance layer to make trust and safety built in to AI solutions as they're built and deployed in Africa, and how can we use federated learning to combine all of that data and use it in a institutionalized and harmonized way. So listen up as we go through. I think there's going to be a lot to pick up on. And if you're a builder, if you're a regulator, if you're a banker, if you're a researcher, if you're an academic, there's going to be stuff in this webinar that you can take away and start working on almost directly. And of course, we're here to help if you need it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Was a definitive one. Please, over to you, Sharon, for your goodwill message, so we can begin.
Thank you so much, Deepo. Hello, Paul. Hi, the audience. It's actually very interesting for us to have this conversation right now, because as we are seeing the way AI has evolved from the time that it used to be like a novel idea that's no longer like in the distant past to where it is right now, you can see that there's a lot of growth and changes that has happened. Just picking up from what Paul has mentioned, there's so many use cases of federated learning which we're going to be learning today. From finance, we go to healthcare, cybersecurity as well. So you'll see that the use cases are very many, and one of the key ones that I want to bring close to you is the one that we use here at East Africa, which we are based in Nairobi, Kenya. So we are an AI as a service company and also do a lot of capacity building and training and build AI solutions as well. But one of the key things that we have within the organization is a platform, which we call it Safe AI Trust. So this is secure, accountable, federated, and ethical AI. And one of the key things that we look at is GBV, misinformation, deepfakes. How can you be able to mitigate this? How can you be able to reduce these instances, especially within Africa? So please allow me to just do like a small presentation to show you more in depth what I'm talking about. So what you're seeing here is just a little bit more. I'm picking up from what Paul and Deepa have been mentioning. We have Safe AI, which is a trust. It's not a company. So our mission is just to look at what we're looking at. We're looking at gender-based violence in the African context. Like, how are we using AI in this scenario? So you'll find that current AI has increasingly been used in Western data, designed for Western context and deployed without consideration of the African realities. But yeah, so you find that it's been deployed for the Western data, using Western data. So think about examples where we have like the GBV tools that has been deployed and used. You find that it's actually been used on Western data. So the deepfakes that we have fail on melanated skin, not because they're of malice, but because of the training data didn't include us. So the fact checkers cannot speak even our languages. So think Swahili, think Hausa, think Zulu. And so the misinformation spreads so fast and checked using these languages. And then also the GBV prevention tools assume survivors have smartphones, stable internet, and trauma-informed therapists. In many communities, they have a feature phone and the voice cannot be heard. So one of the things that we came up with as a trust, we wanted to be able to now have a system which my colleagues are going to be emphasizing more on, like how we have embodied dignity through the distributed intelligence. So what this means is like being able as a GBV survivor or a GBV victim, be able to now use the systems that are in place to be able to share your voice without having to fear that someone else has used this information for harm. So you'll find that we've embodied dignity, which is the survivors operating in chronic stress, which states that their learning is impaired. So we have built a tool which is called Solace, which regulates the nervous system before delivering content through voice prosody and pacing and color psychology. As you can see, the warm colors that I've chosen for this presentation just tells you how we can be able to see that the color choices help. And then you also have the distributed intelligence, where now this is where federated learning enters. So we do not believe in centralizing sensitive data that creates a honeypot for hackers and violation of trust. Instead, we believe that data stays local, but wisdom becomes global. So one of these key platforms that we have over here is basically built with federated learning. And the three pillars that we work with is safety, authenticity, and sovereignty. So you can be able to see the GBV survivors. They contribute to warning patterns detection without exposing their identity or location, because that's one of the things that most of the survivors and the victims fear. And then you also have the deepfake detection. So you'll find that with the rapid rise of using AI, you find that most people are afraid of even posting a photo of theirs online because someone else will use some of these LLMs that are there to do harm. So those deepfake decisions, like how can you be able to detect that a photo of taken of my face and put it in someone else's body is actually mine, or is it fake? And then you now see that all this, we talk about data. Data stays within the continent. We want our data to stay within the continent. We want our data to stay within the country. Because now when it comes to the privacy, we want to like be able to now say that the data that you have within Kenya stays within Kenya and does not travel to other places. So you only have you have encrypted mathematical logic, which is now being promoted. So let me not go into detail about this, but one of the key things that I can say that with the fact that we are talking about data staying within the continent, and we want something which is evidence-based. So we want to be able, like this solution that we have, which is CPI, has key features like Solis. Now you can be able to see you have stable neural pathways. So the survivors learn empathically without direct trauma response. And then you have polyvagal theory, where we regulate the nervous system before delivering content. And then you have the computer vision is now it's where the deepfake comes in, because what we did, we enabled training of 10,000 plus data sets on melanated skin. So these are the data that you collected within the continent, that is Africa in question, and then use it over there. So I will go on and on, rambling more about CPI and about federated learning, but I really love us to now discuss more as we welcome the rest of the panelists to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. That is the way it is when you discuss with mathematicians. For we lawyers, all of those things is just, wow, what are you talking about? But for data scientists, for people who understand how these things work, they have the intelligence, and it's something that I really envy. It's something that I really envy. Knowledge is everything. For you to be able to do anything in life, you have to have knowledge. You have to have the capacity. If we are discussing federated learning, and then Dr. Sharon just showed us what she has shown us, and even me, you have a considerable experience in the field, you still find it difficult to understand some of those things, then I can understand the way it is, for most of the participants. To solve that problem, we have Dr. Blessing Gwembe. He's going to be giving us an introduction into what federated learning is, what PETs are, and how this federated learning can be used when it comes to AI deployment in financial, health, and other sectors. So over to you, Dr. Blessing. Thank you very much.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. I want to appreciate everyone connecting to this webinar. So today I'll be speaking about the concept of federated learning. So I'll be taking it to the very basic level. Then I'm also going to showcase a couple of use cases as regards financial regulation and data privacy protection. So I'm going to share my slide right away. I think I'm having issues with sharing my slide.
No, we can see it. I can see it.
I can see it, Dr. Gwebe. I can see it.
Yep. It's there. Slide number 2 is on the screen.
Can you see my slide?
No, it's not visible now. It's disappeared a minute
ago. No, we can't see it, Dr. Gwebe. Okay, now I can see. Dr. Gwebe, can you hear us?
I'm coming. I have to. Yeah, I can hear you. I can't even see my slide.
would it be easier if you share the slide with me? Then I can share from my end. Would that make it better? Maybe we can try that.
I want to try again. I think it's from my
Okay.
segment.
I mean, I think while we wait for Dr. Gwembe to get us the slides, one thing I noticed when Sharon was speaking was that she mentioned fact checkers when it comes to disinformation and misinformation. I saw a video on TikTok a few days back, and I didn't know it was AI generated. You know, I just couldn't tell the difference. It has gotten so good these days that if we have to rely on the EUA Act and the trust mark we have to put on it, if they don't do that, how would we know? You know, so I think the fact checkers are very important things to in this part of the world. You know, in this part of the world, the generative AI has become, I mean, more than I could even comprehend. I don't know how they do it over there in Kenya for the fact checkers. I mean, I think it's something that we have to find a way to incorporate here, especially when it comes to the local areas in Nigeria, so people can know that these things are not real. So I think we will explore more on that, Dr. Sharon. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Because the way you just said, because one of the biggest, apart from TikTok, I think X has the biggest generated videos that you can't even be able to tell which is true or not because of Grok. So I think that, yes, we can do that because one of the things that we have done is now training, being able to have like a deepfake detector within the organization. Now we can be able to detect like this, this video is AI generated because, as you mentioned, it becomes better and better every time. And for us, the human eye, we cannot see the difference, but at least with a computer, it can be able to see it.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I believe that in Nigeria, we are going to see more of such due to the fact that we are having our election period coming up. So political parties are going to be deploying a lot of things when it comes to misinformation. I think we have to find a way to put a lid on that before that happens. You know, these are real problems. These are real problems. So thank you. Dr. Gwembe, are you ready for us now? Dr. Gwembe. Dr. Gwembe, can you hear me, sir? I think he's having a little bit of problem with this. Okay.
Sorry, I'm having technical issue. All right. I'm good to go.
Oh.
So can you see my screen now?
Yes, I can. I think we all can.
All right, awesome. So once again, thanks for having me. So today I'll be speaking on federated learning. First, I'll look at the basic concept of federated learning in terms of the architecture of federated learning. Then I'm going to speak about the key difference and trade-off between centralized learning and federated artificial intelligence. Then I'm going to talk about privacy preserving mechanism in federated learning in terms of sensitive data protection. Then we are also going to look at the core privacy enhancing technology in terms of regulatory requirements and strategic requirements. Then I'm also going to demo a couple of use cases in terms of, in the financial context, in terms of like AML, anti-money laundering, and privacy preserving technology. Then we are also going to look at complex attack detection in the financial domain. So at a very low level, let's say at the very lowest level, federated learning is all about training machine learning models without aggregating the raw data to a centralized server. So this means that we don't have to take the data to a particular database or data center to train the model. Rather, we send the model to the data. Now, if you take a look at the architecture, you observe that we have various number of clients, from client 1 to client up to client K. Then we have a global server. Right here, what the clients are doing, they basically are training AI models and local data sets. So let's say we have various financial institutions in this case, like banks. For example, client 1 can be a bank, and in the bank we have the local data set residing in the bank. So rather than aggregating data from various sources from different branches, federated learning normally creates clients, then train the data locally, then send the what they call the model weight, which is like a mathematical summary, to the server rather than sharing raw data. So this basically ensures data protection, and it also enhances privacy preserving protection in order to protect sensitive transaction data as well as users' information. So this aligns with data minimization techniques, which is actually one of the core principles of the General Data Protection Regulation in the EU, and it also limits what we call access to sensitive information. So this shows that federated learning by default is what they call like principle like by design. In other words, you don't have to design before, you don't have to implement before a federated learning. Federated learning is part of the core concept from the conceptualization stage right up until the deployment stage. So right here, I'm going to talk about the difference between a federated learning and centralized learning. You know, in artificial intelligence, we have the two core foundation or components are basically the data set and the learning process. You know, for any artificial intelligence solution to scale, we have the data must be aggregated in the right format. In other words, you have to aggregate data from different sources, pre-process the data sets. Pre-processing involves cleaning the data sets to align with the task. You know, data all over the world are basically dirty. So when you aggregate data, the next step that is involved is to clean the data. So in this phase, the data normally pass through different stages. So engineers or data scientists can actually manipulate sensitive data or poison the data. So rather than doing that with like the traditional machine learning concept, most data privacy law, especially in the EU and in the US, they are saying that, look, we don't have to train machine learning models in a centralized environment, else it would definitely compromise a sensitive information, which is actually a part of national security in any nation. So they are saying that rather than aggregating this data, why not look for a solution where the users can own their data and you can actually send the model right to the user's device? I'll give a simple example. Let's say in the Federal Capital Territory in Nigeria, we have like IoT devices, edge devices like a CCTV camera that normally capture events in the FCT, right? So rather than aggregating data from each of these edge devices to a central server for training or database, why not send machine learning algorithms or machine learning models right to the edge devices, right to the CCTV devices, and train the model on a go instead of aggregating the data? For example, let's say we want to carry out terrorism prediction, right? We have users VBN, we have their fingerprint, we also have their facial data. Rather than aggregating all of these data to a central server, we can actually send the machine learning model to train on the data set rather than aggregating the data set. So if there is a particular event of, let's say, crime, the machine learning model can actually train on the edge devices, the CCTV camera, and automatically classify a particular incident or a particular, let's say, a particular victim or a particular terrorist or a wanted individual the authorities are basically looking for. So right here is like the the protective sensitive nature of federated learning. So when we talk about this, we take a look at data protection in terms of protecting sensitive data in federated learning. And federated learning provides so many, like a couple of features to protect sensitive data. And one of them is data minimization. Then we also have no raw data centralization. Like I said before, instead of centralizing the data, federated learning automatically eliminates that phase. Then we have privacy by design. Like I said before, federated learning is all about training on the user's device. It's all about training on the local environment. So in other words, federated learning is not necessarily integrated after the implementation stage. Federated learning is implemented before the conceptual model, before conceptualizing the model. Then we also have distributed accountability. For example, let's say we are training models, or let's say fraud detection models in 10 banks. 2 banks own their data. They don't have to release their data. What they do is that they take accountability to whatever happens to users' data. So this ensures hope for responsible AI and transparency, as well as traceability. In other words, whatever happens in any client, we can trace back and audit that particular client in terms of user data protection and sensitive data protection. So this ensures auditability, which is in line with a GDPR requirement, which is the core of data governance and responsible AI. Then we also have the privacy enhancing technology, which is known as a PET. PET has been recognized by the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity and the UK Information Commissioner's Office. And these are core principles of federated learning approaches. In other words, without PET, federated learning cannot actually scale in terms of protecting users' data. And decentralized learning does not provide this feature. Decentralized learning, anybody can aggregate data, store the data in a particular database or server and train a machine learning model, which is against, current regulations such as the EU AI Act and GDPR. Then in the PET model, we have what they call the differential privacy. So what the differential privacy does is that it actually had what they call statistical noise or calibrated noise to a data set. So in case there is an issue of a data leakage, differential privacy can actually undo the issue of data leakage efficiently. Then we also have what they call the secure party computation. So the secure party communication enables various clients, institutions, organizations that are working on a collaborative learning to jointly compute input. In other words, the input are kept private throughout the training phase and the computational phase. So these are core values that actually enhances federated learning privacy and makes it like a privacy preserving machine learning architecture. Aside that, there are different use cases that we can actually use PETs and federated learning to implement. So I'm going to give several use cases that align with the GDPR and the EU AI Act. And just let's just take a look at it this way. Let's say we have a bank in the US and we have another bank in the EU. So, and they want to train an artificial intelligence model to detect attacks. Based on the GDPR law, there is no way, in fact, it's against the legal principle and regulatory constraint to aggregate data from the EU and send to the US, which is how the traditional machine learning and centralized model works. So rather than doing this, in fact, it is almost impossible since it's against the regulatory requirement. So what organizations are currently doing, they normally build a federated learning model where financial institutions in the US and in the EU can collaborate without exposing their data. So with this, they normally share what they call intelligence rather than data. Like I said before, a particular institution, financial institution, can send their AI model to learn on the US data asset, which is locally residing in the US, then collaborate with the shared intelligence. In other words, what is shared back to the EU is just what they call, like I said before, model weight, which is like a mathematical summary of the trained model, the trained input. And this input is globally aggregated. So at the end of the day, they shared complex reasoning. For example, attack that has never been seen in the EU before. Once that particular attack gets to the EU, because they've already shared intelligence, it will automatically be detected in the EU as like a fraudulent attack. Like some of the use cases we've built over the years is what I call distributed learning, or let's say global fraud pattern across institutions. I actually designed this particular architecture. So in this particular architecture, you can see that we have various banks. We have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 banks: Bank A, Bank C, Bank D, and Bank E. So in this case, they are collaborating on a centralized server, which is the Federated server, to train various local models. So these various local models are trained on the local data set. For example, Bank A is training on their local data set. Bank B is doing the same thing, rather than sharing the data sets to various servers across the world. They only share their model weight, which is mathematical summary. So at the end of the day, they are able to detect unseen attacks, complex attacks they've never experienced before in the nature that it arrives in the future, because they've already shared intelligence, they've already learned in a federated environment, which actually enhance the model performance. So this is how a global fraud pattern across institutions is actually detected. We've never witnessed this pattern of attacks in the past, but based on the fact that we've shared intelligence on the federation, we can actually detect this attack. And federated learning has also been employed in anti-money laundering. I also implemented this particular framework. So this framework enabled financial institution and also complies to FinCEN and as well as FCA pilot regulatory framework. So this enabled us to explore how money laundering works across Africa and across the EU, and it's also detect complex money laundering pattern that has never been seen before, because this institution across the world, they've already shared intelligence. For example, in the EU, almost about $32 billion has been lost to a financial fraud, such as money laundering. So we've been able to design federated learning framework to understand this complex pattern. Our behavioral pattern across the world carry out AML, and with federated learning, since this institution across the world has actually shared intelligence, then it's actually very easy to detect this complex attack because they've learned from this pattern without even accessing the data. So in a nutshell, the idea of federated learning is not only to protect sensitive data, which is one of the core when Google actually developed it in 2026. However, federated learning has also increased shared intelligence. Even smaller organizations without adequate data set can collaborate, no matter how small their data set is. But the most important thing is that they are sharing intelligence, which can enable them to detect complex attacks. For example, in the Africa ecosystem, like let's say Nigeria, for example, we don't really have like the huge amount of data set to train complex model. So these local banks can actually collaborate with institutions across Europe, across the United States, even without accessing the data. But the benefit of all this is that they can share intelligence that can actually help them detect complex financial fraud or cybersecurity breach that they've never witnessed before. So this is how federated learning can actually enhance data protection and can also enhance a fraudulent transaction detection in the real world as well as in Africa. So I think Africa can actually key into this concept and implement federated learning, which is it's not that difficult because we have different open source federated learning techniques such as TensorFlow federated. We also have PySwift, and we also have Flower, which is the very recent one that is actually doing well globally. So young African developers, engineers, as well as regulatory bodies can actually key into these techniques and implement federated learning. So the idea is, like I said before, aside data protection and regulatory compliance, we can actually share intelligence across financial institutions, healthcare institutions, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. That was a wonderful presentation. very explanatory. Thank you very much, Daniel Anego. When we are ready for question and answer, we're going to ask your questions. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. One of the key takeaways of things I learned from your presentation is that we are sending the model to the data, and not data to the model. You know,
Exactly.
And then we are sharing intelligence. You know, imagine what we can achieve when it comes to healthcare. You know, having to share intelligence with foreign organizations that have a lot of data on sicknesses, how to prevent them, how to address issues, how to quarantine. You know, it's going to really go a long way when it comes to the health sector. Likewise, the financial sector that I just mentioned. So it's a wonderful idea. It's a wonderful idea. It won't be complete if I do not, at this point, introduce the collaborating agencies for this particular webinar. I will do that briefly, then we're going to continue once I'm done with that. So give me a minute to make the introductions. Right. So this particular webinar is a collaborative effort between Access Intelligence, Law Digits, ACE, which is Safe AI, Responsible AI Governance Initiative, and PRESEFI, which is the Presidential Committee on Economic and Financial Inclusion. For background, Access Intelligence is an international technology consultancy specializing in secure, responsible AI and the lead architect of the KYCOM, Know Your Community Federated Learning Project. KYCOM will be the first Federated Learning Lighthouse project to address and mitigate the fragmented and siloed data challenges on the continent. Access Intelligence is also the creator and distributor of the freely available ARISE framework, a proprietary assurance model that offers organizations compliance by design and a unified operationalization of technology governance. The framework is local and contextual, mapped to the African Union AU Continental AI Strategy, and soon to the Nigerian Data Protection Act, NDPA, while remaining globally aligned with the EU AI Act, NIST framework, and the ISO. Through strategic partnerships in Nigeria, Access Intelligence is building the infrastructure for a safe and trusted AI future across the continent. Our second collaborator is, for more information, you can look at the chat box to know more about Access Intelligence. Our second collaborator is East Africa, Safe AI. Is a visionary initiative led by East Africa to build a community-driven federated AI system for digital trust and safety to address the growing wave of digital threats. So for you to have an understanding of what they do, Sharon has mentioned that they work with gender-based violence, deepfakes, and have implemented different AI strategies when it comes to social problems. The third collaborator is Responsible AI Governance Initiative. The RIGI is an independent public interest non-profit organization based in Abuja, Nigeria, dedicated to building the governance frameworks, institutional capacity, and implementation mechanisms needed for Nigeria and Africa to govern artificial intelligence responsibly. Operating at the intersection of policy, law, and technology, RIGI translates global AI safety, governance, and assurance knowledge into locally grounded standards, guidance, and institutional tools. Through research, capacity building, convening, and implementation-focused partnerships, RIGI helps move AI governance from strategy to operational reality in the public interest. Thank you so much, RIGI, for being part of the webinar. If you want to know more, I think it's in the chat as well. It's very important for Nigeria to be at the forefront of tackling whatever comes with AI deployment and development. So RIGI plays a pivotal role in ensuring that. Then our final collaborator is the Presidential Committee on Economic and Financial Inclusion, the PRESEFI. This is a Nigerian government initiative established to drive economic growth and bridge for the financial gaps across the country. It was launched by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu under the Renewed Hope agenda, and the committee provides high-level oversight for the ASU Accord, a roadmap aimed at achieving a $1 trillion economy for Nigeria by 2030. So thank you very much, the presidency, for also collaborating with us. And as you know, we are law digits. Anything that has to do with regulatory and legal when it comes to data protection, AI governance, and cybersecurity. So thank you everyone once again for that. In moving on to the next session, we have gotten a lot of insights from Dr. Gwembe. Now we know what it is. Now we know how it works. Dr. Tega, Never mind. I've been able to do that. So we've learned how it is. We now know what it means, and now we know how it functions, and we understand the benefits. We can apply it to numerous use cases, right? And that is something that of course we should also look into when it comes to us developing our own AI models within the country. We're going to be moving on to the next session. We're going to be talking about asking questions from our panelists on these substantial issues that have been raised today when it comes to how can it be implemented, what are the use cases, what can we use them for, how can we integrate this into our systems here in Nigeria. So I'm going to introduce the panelists. The first person we have as panelist is Mr. Paul Crawford. Can you hear me, Paul?
Yes, I can.
Thank you very much. And then we also have Sharon as a panelist. Sharon, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. And obviously, Dr. Gwembe will be here to provide support to us when it comes to the technicals of federated learning. I will be the one that will moderate this session. So I believe it's going to be an interesting one. So thank you very much, everyone, as we begin the next session. So, Paul, we've heard all these things that Dr. Gwembe has said. And obviously, you are more knowledgeable in this area based on your experiences. Having worked at Apple for a lot of years, and also with your years of experience in the game. In your view, I mean, why do you think organizations struggle to share data in the first instance? Or is there any struggle at all?
Do organizations struggle to share data? I think, I mean, if we look at it through the lens of perhaps regulators, I think most of them hang on to their data, quite tightly, right? Would you expect the National Financial Intelligence Unit or the Security and Exchange Commission to be sharing data? Would you expect the CBN to be opening up their data vaults? I don't think anybody would, really. I think something that Dr. Gwembe said, and the point being that I'm not more knowledgeable about federated learning than Dr. Gwembe. I'd like to point that out very quickly. Spending 10 years at Apple didn't teach me anything about federated learning. I'm not sure what it taught me. Something he said was that there's an analogy you can think about, which is it's like a study group where no one shares their notes, right? So it provides an environment where people, let's say organizations, can come together, share intelligence, but they don't have to feel like they're just giving up all of their homework and then they're doing somebody else's homework for them. It also enables, if you think about the study groups perhaps you were in at school or at university, whether you were the most driven in that study group and therefore you did the most reading and you did the most preparation, or whether you were the least driven or somewhere in between, there was always scales of who's got the most knowledge, just as there are scales of who's got the most data, who's got the most up-to-date data, accurate data, curated data, wrangled data. And you'll find that when we've been simulating a federated learning platform with 4 banks in Nigeria, right? And what we found was that in the findings of the simulations based on synthetic data, the bank with the least amount of data, perhaps because they have the least amount of customers or because they capture the least amount of transactional behavioral data, etc., they're the ones that get overshadowed by the big banks, right? So if you were to take an exercise where you said, okay, sod the law, let's not worry about the law, let's just pool our data and see what we get out of it, you would actually find that kind of data lake approach would give you worse accuracy, it would give you worse predictions than if you're actually using it from a federated learning perspective, because the smallest data sources, the banks, let's say banks with the smallest amount of data, with the least amount of iterations, with the least amount of data points, they basically just get subsumed by the bigger banks, right? So even in an instance where perhaps 4 or 5 banks or 4 or 5 hospitals or 4 or 5 schools or 4 or 5 agricultural producers could come together and say, let's just pool our data and see what we can learn from it, you're still not going to get a great F1 score. You're not going to get great accuracy. And I think that's really important to think about, because you could sit here thinking, all right, well, it sounds like a great platform. How come nobody's doing it? Why don't we just all kind of get together, find loopholes in the law or some kind of, agreements around how we can actually share data, kind of maybe a TIA or some kind of universal customer consent, for example, and then let's see what we can get out of it. You're just not going to get the results. The answer to your question, I'm being very political here, and I kind of swerved around your question. The answer to your question, why do organizations struggle to share data? I don't think it's necessarily a willingness. No, sorry, it's not necessarily a capability, it's a willingness. They don't want to share data. Right? They hold on to it. It is the core of what makes that organization, in their minds, successful. One last point on this topic. When I was in Accra last September, I saw the Honourable Sam George present at a conference, and he said that one of the first things he wanted to push through the government of Ghana was a data harmonization bill. And the way he put it, and we were in a hotel in the middle of Accra, he said, down the road is that regulator and that public office. Over there is that public office, and behind us is that public office. And they've all got reams of data, right? Valuable information about citizens, about businesses, etc., about the economy, about the environment. But none of them want to share. They just kind of sit on it and try and, analyze it and use it as much as they can without sharing it. And that's kind of where that lack of willingness. So he realized that he needed to have a bill to get these siloed institutions to try and share their data. So it's not a capability, it's a willingness. I'm going to end there.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you for that. I think I can understand it from the angle of business agencies, because bigger banks, we don't want the smaller banks to, for instance, using banks as an example, to know what they know and probably benefit from whatever data that they have gathered over the years. So that is understandable. Whereas the smaller banks might want to, if they are going to benefit from that kind of situation, leverage on that federated learning process to benefit more. I think at the end of it all, it has to do with the willingness, like you said, to share. But that willingness has to come with the fact that they know that they're expecting something in return. Let's say, Antonia, we get to your questions soon. Let's say, what are they going to benefit from participating in that kind of federated learning? What are they going to gain from it? If we can answer the question from what are they going to gain from it, the bigger banks, so to speak, then maybe that willingness can be there to share more data, to share data. Thank you very, very much. Do you have a question, Antonia, regarding that?
Yeah, I just wanted to support Paul's actually thought about data sharing, because in the European Union we had a project about how to promote data sharing, and I was coordinating this between different stakeholders. I just wanted to share my experience. And then I was moderating a dialogue between different companies, and then one person said that it was a big Nordic company about AI and automotive sector, and they said that they invested heavily in know-how, and then they hired 3 PhDs. After that, they published, their know-how, and they wanted actually to share their knowledge, and they traced actually where most downloads came from, and they were very surprised that most of the downloads were from China. And then they analyzed what they invested and where the knowledge was going to, and they decided not to share anymore. And I was moderating this big dialogue about data sharing and how beneficial is it, and when he said that, everyone had to acknowledge that he had right, because he said it was our money, and then we see that what we did doesn't go actually to our partners. It goes directly to China with tremendous downloads. So we had to face the truth and to find a solution. And the solution that we actually found is that you don't go from no sharing to sharing. You start sharing with your trusted partners when you see benefits. So you start sharing only within your trusted network with people where you see that the sharing actually brings you some benefits or some shared knowledge, and where you see that it makes sense to share. And in this way, slowly, and gradually over the years, and with a very strict analysis, you grow, this network of sharing. But probably you never achieve the level of global sharing. So yeah, in Europe we also went through this, and there is no solution. I think that, and the European Union actually accepted this model, and this is what we use as lessons learned, that it doesn't bring sense to companies to share globally and without control.
Thank you so much for that addition, Antonia. I mean, that was wonderful. Because now we understand the a real life situation of what we're trying to talk about. So thank you so much for that knowledge. Dr. Kendi, please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm here. Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here, and wow, the presentations are excellent. So I just wanted to throw in maybe I wouldn't want to say play the devil's advocate, because I know there has to be a balance between what Paul Crawford said and what Antonia said, which is, I mean, in some situations it's necessary for organizations to share. And then with Antonia's example, there needs to be caution, there needs to be a balance. So my question is, I know for example, in Nigeria, about 80% of the population are small and to medium enterprises. They cannot afford the infrastructures to be able to share, because sharing, there's the security concern, looking about cybersecurity principle. Are the data secured in transmission, at rest, in storage, and things like that? The organizations need to have the software and the technology and the capacity and the skills to be able to look at the security implication of sharing those datas, especially if they don't have the financial capacity to be able to maintain very strong security infrastructures. So the economy of each country would help them determine what approach they need to take, because it's not just about sharing. The willingness to share might be there, but there might be several constraints that is stopping organizations from sharing. Like, for example, what Antonia said. And of course, so things has to be looked at holistically to find out, is it more beneficial to share, or is it more dangerous to share? And if it is, what is the structures that those organizations can combine together? Of course, federated learning approach will help in this way, so that data is not being transferred, but it is the model or the data analytical model that is being applied to the data, where the data is safe with the owner of the data, and data is not flying globally and going to several places. So I think we need to come up with different, if I'll say, frameworks, or analyze different situations and be able to postulate what are the solutions to these several issues, because it's peculiar to Africa that most of business owners don't have the capacity, technical capacity, not necessarily intellectual, but the technical capacity and the skills to be able to make these things happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kendi, for the contribution. I think we can take Mr. Adeni, then we can Paul can answer the questions, or anybody that wants to do that. Mr. Adeni, go ahead, please. Mr. Bakari.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful section. I just wanted to also buttress on what the previous scholar had said. It's really key that we consider small and medium enterprise, because why I'm saying this, as someone who has an experience in Europe a bit with sustainability and ESG research, it is also key that these are some of the issues, right? And that's why the European Union created like a separate reporting framework for small and medium enterprises when it comes to data sharing and data capabilities, because they found out that there's a really big gap between CSRD and for smaller companies, and they created the VSME, right? And for me, I think it's also good that when it comes to AI, we should consider the small, medium enterprise, smaller economies, because they might not have the financial and the technical capacities to compete with bigger nations. And this can create like a synergy and integrate them easily. And secondly, I would also want to contribute to the fact that when it comes to data sharing, a lot of people are wary when it comes to ethical use of it. And I think it's also a big problem in Africa because we want to be sure where the data is going, how it's being used, what purpose, and what benefits, what are the incentives when we share these data. And unfortunately, even the bigger economies use this data as a leverage over the smaller economies. So there's a bit of complexities when we talk about data sharing and data governance. And so I'm actually glad that some persons are mentioning this. Also, I would just like to chip in a question in between, and it's more of a technical one. And for me, I think, how do you think it's going to Dr. Gwembe, maybe subsequently when it's done to comment on something? How do we propose, or what do you propose on how do you think we think emerging economies can integrate and leverage on these AI and ML frameworks to solve real case problems, security, finance, media, health, because these are some of the pertinent problems within the smaller economies. And how do you think we can integrate this and leverage on these models? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bakari. Let me clarify so everybody can know what is going on here. When it comes to discussions like this, I mean, there's no point trying to gag people. It's better for everybody to give whatever they can when it comes to knowledge. It's all about learning at the end of it all. So even if it is just this particular question we can hammer on today to get a resolution, I don't see why we shouldn't discuss it. So I think we have hands up for people that want to give us more insights. So Paul, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, just to maybe kind of, I don't know if the right word is clarify or build on some questions and what's been said previously. It's not an all or nothing approach. It's not no data sharing or all data sharing. Of course, data sharing needs to happen. And there's a lot of bureaucracy around making data sharing happen, and rightly so, because it needs to be protected and it needs to be secure. But with a data protection impact assessment or a conformity audit return to the DPC, the NDPC, if you had a universal customer consent mechanism, then, and if you know that your data is going to a place which has an adequacy provision, then data can be shared. And if we're talking about SMS, small, medium enterprises in African countries, if we talk about gig workers, market traders, POS agents, smallhold farmers, that don't have the technical capacity to be able to share data, they are already sharing their behavioral and transactional data with probably the mobile telecom companies and the banks. That's the data that needs to be acted on to learn more about their behaviors. Now, they'll also probably be sharing information through surveys, perhaps IFINA, and also to industry bodies like SMEDAN and PEBEC, on their business, on the success of their business, the economy of their business, their living situation, their family situation. So there is that data sharing going on, and it's ending up in repositories that can use it. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's not necessarily the remit of the small, medium businesses or the micro businesses to find ways to share data and send it to different people in order so that it can be built on. They are already sharing data within the limits of the Data Protection Act. And if you look across Nigeria, Ghana, and let's take another one, the DIFC in the UAE, and maybe even bolt on GDPR, there's consent requirements, there's limitation structures, data sharing prohibitions, right across all four of those jurisdictions. So there is a regulatory alignment that gathering raw transaction data, behavioral data into a central hub is now functionally illegal across major frameworks. Right? It's a fortress, and rightly so. So when you've got all of that data and you know that it can benefit from a healthcare perspective, from an agricultural perspective, from an economy perspective, from a cyber resilience perspective, how are we going to act on it? So if PEBEC, SMEDAM, the Ministry of Comms, or the Lagos State, or Lasus Tech, or whoever it is that's holding on to that data, how do we make sure that that can be worked on and used cross-institutional? And I think that's where federated learning comes in. So we're not having a conversation, to my part, we're not having a conversation about the rights and wrongs of data sharing. We're having a conversation about how can we use federated learning to build on the data that already exists in order to benefit the societies.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Paul. What you mean is that data has already been shared, right? It's just for us to channel the data that's being shared properly. And then shared with an FL model to create proper innovation. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Antonia, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I just have a very brief comment, and it's not restricted to the financial context, it's just a generic context. So first, to protect your own knowledge, you need also opt-in and opt-out protocols for communities to decide if they want to share their patterns and their knowledge. And if they want to do so, then in the European Union, we have benefit sharing agreements. In every European project, we do so. So in this way, you also make sure that if you train the big ships, as we talked in the beginning, and they benefit from your knowledge, and they create, commercial benefit from this, you have also your share of it, because this should be fair. And then you also give communities that trust you and share their data the opportunity to opt in and to opt out, and to decide how much they want to share. And then when you merge models, you have to also have the right, weights of how much the big model brings and how much, you bring from the local context. And you need to have a translation layer that actually, if you translate Western framework, you have to have your translation layer on how do you bring this to the African people. You need good traceability, good explainability in order to manage the trust, and that people have to know these weights, how much is mine and how much comes from my context and how much comes from, the big world context. And and I think that you have also to become more active as Africans, not only as a consumer of global standards, but also exporter of knowledge, and to be an active player. And this is my knowledge, and this is what I'm exporting to the world. So, and if you don't do it, nobody will do it for you. So you have to assume this role, because it's your right and it's your responsibility also to say, I'm also exporting. I'm not just consuming. This is all my knowledge. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Antonia. Thank you for that insight. It's been wonderful hearing from you. Thank you so much for that. We'll definitely keep that in mind. Now, Sharon, you want to go next?
Yes. Thank you so much. I just want to build on what both Antonia and Paul have mentioned. One of the key things that we always forget is the fact that this data is everywhere. And what that means, it means that organizations, the small, medium enterprises, they have data, but now they sit in silos. There's no intelligence around it. So what do you do with that data? As much as you might say that some people will argue that they do not want to share that data, but what does it do to you? Like, what do you do with that data? I think the most important conversation right now will be like, how are we ensuring that even if we're sharing this particular data, how do we ensure that personal identifiable information is not being shared? How do we ensure that the regulations, restrictions that have been put, like for example, the data sharing act, for example, for Kenya, how do you ensure that the information that you're sharing is, there's no personal identifiable information? Someone can remove consent from sharing the data. You have sought the consent from them and so forth. So I think this is now where we now start looking at it critically. And if we go the machine learning way, we want to use now, get intelligence of this data, and we want to remain with the data or the sovereignty of the data, and then federated learning, of course, comes into play. Then you'll be able to now see how we can proceed with the conversation.
Thank you so much. That was so wonderful. We have to ensure that the right data is being shared. I think that is the exact thing I got from that. So thank you so much. I think we can move on to the next question now. And that will, go to Sharon. In what ways, do you think federated learning can also be applied? What are the other use cases? We've heard from Dr. Gwembe. He was quite explanatory when it comes to the financial use case. And I think it's a wonderful idea that when it comes to money laundering and AML, CFTs, when it comes to fraud detection, it's a beautiful idea for banks. But when it comes to societal impacts, when it comes to crisis response, for example, or prevention, when it comes to health sector, when it comes to gender-based violence, like you've done already, how do you think FL can come into play here and then give us a robust innovation?
All right. Thank you for the question. Yeah, so there's so many use cases of federated learning, just not limited to finance. As you've mentioned, there's also healthcare, there's cybersecurity, there's also the social aspect. In our case, like for example, I'll just use the example for the GBV. So we normally see that there's a lot of gender-based violence within the continent, within Africa. So lots of people have been able, unfortunately, they've had this experience, which is quite sad. So one of the key things you find that when you can be able to now use federated learning in this case, you're protecting the user who is a survivor. So in our case, like for example, I have a smartphone and I want to record saying that, you know what, I've had this incident and this has happened, but I don't know what to do about it. And then now you'll be able to now record it maybe on device. And then now you're having a model, like for example, our Lumen can be able to now process that and gain inference from what you've mentioned, and then help build that model. And then that model is being applied to the global model. So what this happens is now you can be able to help millions and millions of not really millions, like 100,000 people across Africa who are facing instances of GBV and really need assistance. So you'll find that it's both a preventative way where they can now be able to be able to detect, to be able to look at instances and see, you know what, if you proceed with this pattern, you're really seeing the patterns, it's going to happen. Then now you start having the prevention, then be able to call the people for assistance. The person who's within this particular region is facing this particular issue. Can you be able to go in, call them, check them up before actually it happens?
Thank you so much for that. But in my head, I'm thinking in that particular use case. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me? Paul, Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right.
Yes,
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm thinking in that particular use case, right? How does that? Is there a way that can equate to justice for people going through or have gone through gender-based violence? In what world can that happen? Whereby we can use the data that we generate in such instances to actually deliver justice to people. Is that possible in any way?
When you talk about delivering justice, what do you mean?
Maybe trying to hold people, the perpetrators, hold them to account, or maybe when it comes to access to maybe the courts, or if it's even arbitration in any way. How can that FL and data in this instance, get to that extent?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you find that, so again, I'll just use this use case again. So I have recorded information on the phone, a user has recorded information on the phone and they've been able to see this particular pattern is likely to happen or an incident has happened, and then they've raised an alarm. So there's an SOS system that we've implemented, so you can be able to triangulate and see that this particular case have come from this region. So what they can do, they can be able to see the people who are closer to them, but now getting the actual evidence of the survivor's device is the one that it's not going to happen, because you as a lawyer, the justice system, you cannot get that data, because one, that data was given to us with anonymity, and then also we have their trust, so we cannot start giving the data back to you. But now we can help triangulate that particular instance and be able to see this is the person that helped perpetrate that kind of instance.
I mean, that's a very good one. So basically, it is preventive.
Yeah.
All right, that's a good one. I think in that context, we can start thinking about how we can use it to prevent the spread of disease. Right, Paul, please go ahead.
Well, I wanted to just kind of pick up on that comment about, delivering justice, right? And the challenge in gathering information about crime or malfeasance, or when people commit things that they really should be held accountable for, it can be very difficult to sieve from the data that actually points to some kind of crime or malfeasance to something that's just a defensive kind of piece of data, right? I'm going to go back into the financial world because that's where I've spent a lot of time analyzing, how data is used. And I want to point out, of all of the suspicious transaction reports that get flagged by banks to the National Financial Intelligence Unit, well over 95% of those are just complete defensive filings because people are worried about maybe perhaps being found that they didn't do something strong enough with their processes to counter fraud or money laundering. Of all of those suspicious transaction reports, very few of them, in fact, I don't think even one last year went to court or resulted in a piece of justice. Which means that there are people taking billions of naira out of the Nigerian financial system, which makes it that much harder for small business owners, for rural farmers, for market traders to actually have accounts that they can rely on. And yet, nobody's being held accountable. Right? So if you want to track the accountability from, okay, how do we hold people accountable for gender-based violence? How do we hold people accountable for financial crime? Then you have to find a better way to analyze the data. And that's where things like platforms, architectures like federated learning comes in. That's when data sharing, not data sharing, intelligence sharing becomes that much more powerful. So I just wanted to pick up at that point because it would be lovely to say that you can get from point A to point B and hold people accountable. But until you really understand what you need to do in between, it's very, very difficult. And you're just going to constantly try to be regurgitating through data that doesn't really tell you who is accountable or who should be held accountable. You're just trying to kind of sieve through all of these, maybe they're police reports or financial crime reports or suspicious transaction reports, and not really getting to the people that are committing the crimes.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you so much for that clarification. I think I have a better understanding of it now. My next question is to Dr. Gwembe. Doc, I mean, you've been in the field. You know the way this works. You've done it. You've even shown us some of your innovations. What are the challenges that you see in Nigeria? I mean, for organizations that may want to integrate this FL system, for example, in the financial sector, what are the challenges that you see that they might encounter here in Nigeria?
I think the challenges are less technical. One of the challenges I see is rule of law. You get what I'm saying? Rule of law in the sense that in Nigeria, in most cases, anything goes, right? Anything can fly. So people cannot ensure that trust. And most of our data, for example, the healthcare, is isolated. You can't pick up a particular healthcare center or local healthcare center, even our federal medical center. We can't even tell if they have the necessary data as regards, patient care, as regards, let's say, tropical diseases. Like, for example, in the Niger Delta region where I come from, right? With my experience, I can tell the trend of ailments based on crude oil exploration. But for decades, we've not been able to gather such data sets. You get what I'm saying? And even if we manage to gather such data sets, we don't really have the necessary infrastructure in terms of local owned data centers. You get? So I've been privileged to work on some of the finance projects in the EU. For example, like in Bologna, we have one of like the fourth largest GPUs in the world, which is Loniado. You can see how these things are structured. You know how these data are partitioned. can access the data set and all of that. In our cases in Nigeria, one of the use case, for example, BVN, we still have if they are fragmented, they are isolated. We have beavers, we still have name, we have international passport and all of that. What are the laws to bring these things together into a unified component? Where are they hosted? Where are these data stored? So data privacy in Nigeria is on paper. It's not necessarily practical. I've not seen the practical aspect of it. During my PhD research, I requested for data from some of our big banks. I was not able to get it because, one, they were considering so many things, rule of law, like I said before, and there are some fundamental, some very basic concepts. For example, PII, you get, how can we ensure that these techniques, these important requirements are integrated into our data policy requirement? For now, I don't see us getting it for now. For now, in the next, I don't know in the future. For now, I don't see us getting that aspect of it. Another thing is research. Research and innovation. We have so many, solid computer science programs in Nigeria, from the undergraduate level to the postgraduate level. For us to get to the very top, you have to tweak the undergraduate as well as postgraduate curriculum to fit in every aspect of data protection. It's very, very important for people to understand that, okay, these are the core concepts that works in terms of data sharing, in terms of using data to train AI models. For example, if you go on our social media space, you see some certain things, you now start asking questions. Is it that these people don't know what they are sharing? Even our government agencies, they share certain information that are not even supposed to be on social media. That was why I said privacy preserving or whatever, or data privacy and regulations in Nigeria is quite on paper, but in reality, the institutions themselves don't go against the principle of data privacy. We can see all of that on social media. So what I'm trying to say is that we have to fix the legal aspect of it. Then we also have to fix the educational aspect of it, as well as infrastructure. If it's in terms of the know-how, the abilities, the expertise, I think we have it in abundance in Nigeria. But like I said, the legal aspect of it is quite labor, as well as the infrastructure aspect of it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gwembe. I have to say this, right? When it comes to growth, it doesn't have to be like I think that mentioned 0 to 100%. Sometimes it takes time, and you cannot rely on only what you know when you want to grow. So you have to rely on everybody's contributions as well. All these things that you mentioned there as recommendations today are things that we can definitely put together, put in a document, and always put to the regulators. And then they can look at these things, and then we can also boost our own data protection field here in Nigeria. So that's why we have this. So thank you very, very much for contributing. Thank you so much. I think we have to take some questions. Paul, before you come in, okay, I think you should go ahead while I try to get the questions, because we have some questions from the internet, from the form.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to pick up on the points about data protection, personal data protection, that Dr. Gwembe was talking about. And in many places around the world, you can argue that personal data protection is effective on paper but not in practice. Would like to say that from a Nigeria perspective, that is sharpening up. Certainly, if you look at the Data Protection Commission, we've done some work with them recently, and are doing work with them on drafting a Nigeria Data Protection Act certification scheme that can be used by data protection and compliance organizations to really hold businesses to the highest standard of data protection. And that is harmonized with global best practices, but it is contextualized to the Data Protection Act 2023 and the GAID 2025. So you're right. States like Kenya, Ghana, Rwanda, Nigeria have taken a slight lead in bringing data protection acts out, maybe even signing the Malabo Convention. But now it's about supporting those states and supporting those data protection commissions to find mechanisms of assurance. One of the key mechanisms of assurance is audit, and that feeds back into trust and safety. And when you know that there are audits that are being done, independent audits that are being held to the highest levels of assurance and accountability, then you can be more you can have more trust, and you can feel more safe in the AI that's being deployed in your country. So it's all interconnected.
Thank you so much. I totally agree with you with that. I totally agree with that, Paul. So thank you so much.
One last thing. Sorry, Deepa, one last thing.
Go ahead.
For people that are listening, if you want to be a part of that working group working on that certification scheme to draft for the Data Protection Act 2023, it's an open non-profit project. So it's feel free to get in contact, and I can rope you in and include you in.
All right. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to Paul, and then he can set that up for you. Dr. Tega, please go ahead. Good afternoon, Dr. Tega.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Excellent presentation so far from the presenters and the commentators. I just want to pick up from where Dr. Blessing left off. I think those points he mentioned are really important points to note. I'm very impressed by those by the submissions he made. But I'm just going to speak on the aspect of education, because of course I'm in the education sector, and I heard him make mention of the fact that it has to be some form of reform of the curriculum in as we have it now. Okay, so I guess most persons do not know that there is some form of change, or we have some form of change that have taken place in the education sector in the last 3 or 4 years. So the curriculum that most of us went to school with or were trained on has been changed, maybe not as much to people, but I just want us to know that there's been some form of progress in that area. Some universities offer courses on data privacy, data protections, on cybersecurity, software engineering. My institution has all of these courses right now. So that's Admiralty University of Nigeria. There's software engineering as a course, there's cybersecurity as a course, there's forensic science as a course here, there's computer science as a course, right? So before now, we had just computer science in most of the universities, but we have some of these universities, and mine happens to be one of the frontier universities having these specific subject matters as courses that students will have to study for 4 years. And do a project on before they graduate. So for law, we have data privacy as a course here. For the final year student, we have emerging technologies as a course at 100 level for law students. Okay, so he talked about a blend between, or a reform. The reform should commence from the legal aspect, regulatory aspect, and then the education sector, and then infrastructure. I think that's very holistic, but I just wanted to keep that in. And then, Deepa, when you asked about the justice, asked about how FL could aid access to justice, and Sharon did a good presentation on that. But I wanted to also give a case scenario of how that can apply in the education sector. So forgive me, of course, I'm biased because that's where I play in every day. So it's education all the way for me. So supposing we are familiar with cases about molestation, student molestation, and all of that, and how students could be, or let's say victims, how victims could be scared of wanting to report to the authorities, and then even sometimes when these reports are filed, how they are processed, because of course you have to, the person or the persons have to come forth, give their names, give the details of how it happened, where it happened, with whom it happened. All of that is data that has to be taken. And now, so FL could aid in helping if there is a software, a platform where victims, of course, most times it will be students, and some of the students are minors, they are underaged, where these victims could make their reports anonymously, or even now it's not going to be anonymous, it's going to be anonymous to the public, but it's going to be known to the actors within the field. So let's say the reporting officer who is taking down the report, or the whoever is going to process that data will definitely know the person who made that report. But in assessing or in processing the data and in assessing all the evidence and all of that, FL could help in such a way that the information or the identity of the victim or the reporters are protected, they are secured, while also known to the stakeholders or the actors that actually should know about those information, right? So across all boards, it's not just in the financial sector or in other sectors, even in the education sector, FL could help, you know, in frontiering access to justice, and then even for safekeeping of records and all of that. So I just wanted to chip that in to say this also has use case in other sectors.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you so much, Ma. I think we've learned a lot today. Personally, I've gotten a lot of knowledge from everyone that is here. We have some questions that if we don't take, some people might get angry because they ask the question on the form. One of those questions is, can you recommend any institutions that teaches the above areas? And I think Dr. Tega has done a beautiful job in recommending those institutions. you know, but if you want to have maybe the necessary knowledge when it comes to data protection, what it means, the basics, the technical angles as well, rather than to go to a university, obviously you can subscribe to our newsletters, or even check our website out, and then you can get some of these resources for free. Some are also paid as well. So thank you so much for that. Dr. Oge, I would love to hear more of what you have to say, but I want to ask this question before we go to the next part. We can't be talking about how good it is, you know, without knowing what are the risks involved. If we want to use this technology, this FL technology, if we want to protect data in this way, what are the trade-offs, right? So Paul, the question is to you. What are the risks involved in this federated learning approach? Can you give us some of those risks?
I don't think necessarily that there are specific risks to federated learning. There are risks to developing AI models and AI systems, and there, you know, just like bias can creep into a non-federated AI model, bias can also creep into a federated learning based model. But there are lots of bias mitigation tools and methods out there that just need to be applied. I mean, certainly something that Dr. Gwembe and I were talking about earlier this morning is when we did our simulation on synthetic data for banks. One of the things that came out was that you can get issues about data heterogeneity, which means that there are different data schemas, there are different ways of structuring that data across different organizations. Now that can cause problems when it needs to be, when the intelligence needs to be sourced, when the weights and the gradients are coming back to the aggregation model and then going back out to the AI models that are located at those institutions. But there are ways of solving that, right? So it's not necessarily that just because you have different data schemas that everything's going to fall apart, or that the data is structured in different ways. And then, yes, there are issues of data poisoning that can happen, but that can happen in AI models anyway. So I'm not trying to be dismissive of what are the specific risks to federated learning. There are risks when dealing with this type of technology and emerging technologies. We just have to be alive to them and aware of them and be able to mitigate them through effective assurance and governance. We wouldn't be entering into this field to run this project with the Nigeria IT Development Agency, with Pre-CEFI, with the DPC and others, if we weren't 100% sure that we had a fantastic model, an assurance model to base our governance on. And that's something that we're going to be handing over to NITDA and training them on so that they can use our ARISE framework for governance. And if you've got the controls and the processes in place, then you can mitigate the risks. And I've just spent almost a month teaching at MEST Africa here in Accra to AI startups, about 30 entrepreneurs, talking about exactly that. How can you build in compliance by design from the start? I mean, one of the things that's come out of this conversation is that federated learning provides privacy by design. You then need to make sure that you've got a governance model or a governance framework that provides you compliance by design. Combine those two together, you can mitigate most of the risks. And the risks you can't mitigate, then you need to decide whether they fit within your risk threshold, within your risk tolerance, or whether you need to disclose them as residual risk. That would be my answer. I'd be interested to hear from Sharon and from Dr. Gwembe on whether there's anything I missed from a risk perspective.
Thank you very much, Paul. I think that was holistic. If you want to know about measures and controls, you can always go to the arrest framework to look at yourself. I think it's open source, sir. Paul?
Yes, it is, Deepo. It's freely available, and the link is in the chat.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Tega, you want to add something?
Oh, no. Oh, is my hand still up? No.
Oh, okay. All right then. Thank you very, very much. There was a question that I saw on the with the form, right? It goes thus: does federated learning alone mitigate privacy risk? I've read that model updates can still leak information, and federated learning does not by itself provide a formal privacy guarantee. Should we always combine federated learning with differential privacy to ensure governance and defensibility? Dr. Gwembe, are you available?
No, he stepped away for a minute.
Oh, okay. I mean, I would have loved him to answer that question. Well, I guess
it's a fairly straightforward question to answer, which is yes. You should always be combining for differential privacy with federated learning. You need to have one of those models, differential privacy, that noise built in. I mean, it's super important. In the stack that we work off, we use Gaussian differential privacy. We use Flower framework for FL orchestration, and then we use SMPC, the Bonowitz aggregation. So you're right, you can't just go to Flower Labs and start building a framework or using their open source framework. You also need to understand how to build in into your stack things like differential privacy. Very important. Sharon, I'm sure you'd agree, or what do you use within Safe AI?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and also with the question. Of course, there's that whole aspect of asking, like, if privacy is just enough, like with federated learning, is privacy enough? But also there's what you've added, and Paul, I will say that with Safe AI, what we have done, we've also added another layer in terms of protecting the users, the survivors, which is the midnight layer. So this is like a whole blockchain layer. Please, I'm not going to the technical details right now. So that's what we've added in the whole aspect, so that now we can be able to ensure that, yes, we are using federated learning, but also we've added another layer. So ensuring that privacy, it's paramount and 100% all the time.
In any of these projects, you have to have, sorry, Deepo, in any of these projects, you have to have that audit built in. Whether it's internal audit or external audit, you need to be starting with a DPIA, a data protection impact assessment, and then you need to have your internal audit scheduled within the first year, and then ideally you want to be doing an external audit at the end of year one when you're using when you're piloting or using that framework.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much. That shows that even if the risks are present, we can obviously address those risks. So thank you so much for that. The last question, I mean, we are 10 minutes to the end. The final question has to do with the one that was asked on the chat. Mr. Israel Usman asked that, does federated data include synthetic and augmented data? That's number one. And then number two, if so, what are the risks of synthetic and augmented data with regards to federated learning? I think that also is an issue of risk. But Paul, do you want to answer that?
Can you repeat the question? I got the synthetic learning piece, but just tell me again.
It's in the chat. Does federated data include synthetic or augmented data? And if so, what are the risks of synthetic and augmented data with regards to federated learning?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wish I had my CTO with me. Well, I do. I've got Dr. Gwembe. Yay. So maybe if he could lean in on that one. We've been using synthetic data for our simulations. Undoubtedly, we will need to be using synthetic data and maybe even synthetic data sets as we start to ramp up in the pilot that we're going to be doing on financial inclusion and anti-money laundering. What the specific risks are, I'm not entirely sure that I can really kind of comment on that. So I'd defer to Dr. Gwembe, or happy to take that question offline and get my CTO into that conversation.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Paul. I think that brings us to the end of today's program. For me personally, it has been a lovely session to learn from everyone. I've gained insights of things that ordinarily I wouldn't have known if not for this particular session. So I want to thank everybody. What I would emphasize before I give the floor to Paul and Sharon to give their final remarks is that we have to implement a style or a method or a tactics of continuous learning, right? An improvement. We've learned about it today. The next stage is how can we implement it? What can we do with it? So when it comes to this concept, how can we even improve on it? That is where my mind is going at the moment. And hopefully over the next few months, we are going to see what we can do with federated learning and artificial intelligence. So thank you very much. Over to you, Paul, for your final remark.
No, I'll defer to Sharon first. I'll let Sharon go first.
All right then. Please, Sharon, go first.
Sharon, please take the time that you want.
All right. Thank you so much. This was a really, really lovely session. Learning more about federated learning and what access intelligence CFI AC is doing. Also, thank you, Mr. Dipo. So one of the key things that I can say, like a takeaway, is as much as we are moving in a world or in a space where AI will be here to stay. It doesn't matter, like we can't go back to how it used to be. But now the whole thing conversation starts now. The machine learning models that we are building, how private are they? How secure are they? So this is the time now we're moving from the non-traditional way of machine learning and thinking of how can we now leverage the use of federated learning. And then also the aspect that most of the models that we see around the world has been built on Western soil with the Western data. Then now it's our call for Africa, within Africa, to now start thinking of how do we make an impact, how do we make a difference. Of course, we cannot reinvent the world, but we can be able to build solutions, to build technologies that favor us as Africans within the continent.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Thank you so much. That was insightful. Please, Paul, go ahead. Dr. Gwembe, are you here now? Is he back?
Yes, I'm back.
Oh, okay. Please go ahead. Give us your final remark.
Okay, I want to say a very big thank you to everybody that actually connected to this webinar. For the younger ones on this webinar, I want to say that the technical aspect of federated learning is doable. In fact, we can be at the top tier of federated learning or artificial intelligence in terms of the technical aspect of it. So if you feel that you are interested in this domain, please go for it. There are a lot of open source materials on GitHub, on open science and all of that. I have a couple of publications on open science, like in terms of the technical aspect of it and code base. You can also reach me out on LinkedIn. We can always connect, discuss about federated learning and the next phase of AI. I believe that the young guys in Nigeria are doing great stuff. And if they have the technical aspect of the infrastructure, they will, exceed what we expect in Nigeria ecosystem. So please go for it and keep pushing. Once again, thanks for connecting.
Thank you very much, Doc. It's wonderful to have your insight on these things. But we have to go with Paul now.
I was just going to say thank you, Dr. Gwembe, for those words. As obviously one of the young people on this call, I kind of needed to hear that. So thank you. I needed that inspiration. Thank you. I appreciate that you found that funny, because I'm clearly not one of the young people on this call, but I'm still inspired by his words. I'm going to zoom back out again because we've been zoomed right in, so I'm going to zoom back out again. I presented a video from Strive Masiwa, the CEO of Cassava and Econet and other companies. And he was talking about how there's an inflection point coming for the young population in Africa. And at some point, when we get past that inflection point, when you get past that inflection point, then it's the dividend from that young generation, from that young source of power and that young source of energy is going to be lost. So it is a now, it's not a now or never, but it is certainly a now kind of action that you need to take. The African Development Bank calls the strategic window for this action kind of expiring in 2030. So you've got, let's say, 4 or 5 years as developers, as professionals, as researchers, as academics, to really kind of put your mark on these types of technologies. And I would encourage you to do so straight away. If you look at the different types of countries that you're in, you take Rwanda as an innovation hub, Kigali especially. You look at Ghana as a state accelerator, a country that has just launched its national AI strategy that's pushing a lot of bills, emerging technology bill, data protection bill, data harmonization bill. So they're really looking to accelerate. And then you've got Nigeria as a catalytic agent, right? Nigeria with its incredible economy and its population and the diversity in that population. It's bridging the gaps between those different types of states that's going to be really important. So I think what Strive Masiwa wants to point out, and what looking at those different types of countries and what they're trying to do is trying to pointing out, you got to start coming together and really working together. And the best way to do that is through federated learning. It's about building, it's about trialing, it's about testing. And then if it fails, move on to the next thing. So take heart from these types of technologies. This won't be the last type of technology that is presented to you as being something that you should be working on. You'll probably hear a lot more different platforms and architectures through the years that come. But when you hear them, if you really find and see a possibility, then don't wait, just go straight for it.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you for that. It's been a wonderful day. We have to admit that. If you want to learn more about federated learning or data protection or artificial intelligence governance, or even how to deploy it itself, like Dr. Bemba said, you can always reach out to our speakers, reach out to them on LinkedIn, connect with them, talk to them, learn from them. If you want to, know more about us as well as Lord Digits, you can reach out to me personally. You can go to our website or explore every other avenue that you want to explore when it comes to learning these things. They're all online. You can join our data protection community. If you go to our website, you can see it on our website. You can join our AI governance community as well. In all, the idea is to share knowledge and know more. So thank you so much for today. Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you, Sharon. It's been a wonderful session with you. Thank you, Dr. Gwembe. I'm quite impressed by what I've seen here today. So to our participants, I guess we'll be able to get some value from this time that you committed to this. So thank you very much. And then we'll definitely send you the communique and as well as the video of the webinar. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deepo. Thank you, Dr. Wembo. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
At that time, I was applying, which she was coming. So I think what I just left her like that. Because she does not even respond in time. I just left. Like, so I think that gets the main